If you're a fan of Blood Borne, I can now confirm that you will probably like Lies of P. They've come out with some alpha gameplay footage. We're going to go through and break it down, but it's looking very, very exciting. So far, we've only had videos of cinematics and just screenshots giving a general idea of what the game would feel and look like. But now, after watching, you can see that it is dark, it is gritty, it is bloody, and plaguey, if that is even a word. So we know so far that the city has basically been afflicted with this giant plague, and there are mechanoids everywhere. And they are mechanoids of the clockwork form. They've kind of got that weird jolty movement. There's a whole menagerie of them, which we'll get onto in a little bit later. And it just creates this great sense of horror and foreboding and makes you want to just grab the quilt and put it a little bit higher over your eyes. So at the introduction, we can see that everything is very gloomy and dark, and there's lots of clouds. There's also a huge amount of blood everywhere. It's very visceral. It has lots of kind of overlaps with the whole Blood Borne thematics, except with a more shiny, polished undertone of like a big, beautiful city. All the enemies have this nice clockwork noise to them. I think it really adds to the undertone. I can't remember the last time I actually played a game or saw a horror bard Doctor Who that had like monsters with clockwork entities to them, and just everything had this mechanical vibe to them. Anyway, onto the gameplay, because that's the exciting bits that we've got from this. So we can confirm 100% now that it is played in third person. You get to see Pinocchio in his kind of very dashing attire. It's kind of almost like a military-esque kind of robes. You can see that he's got one humanoid arm for the most part, which he has his weapon in, and then he has a clockwork arm which does a whole multitude of different things. They did say that you'll be able to customize your arms and you'll be able to do different things with them, and it seems to have been held true. So far in terms of weapons, I've seen a scimitar. I've also seen a kind of short one-handed sword. There's also a multitude of two-handed weapons. There's a mace which has a big like cog on the end of it. And also one of my personal favourites, there's like a big wood saw which is like being turned into a blade. So that kind of looks cool. It's like a giant bow saw, but you hold it with two hands. There are also one-handed axes. There's also fencing swords, and they all seem to have their own unique movements. They looked really clean and polished. And then there's the more interesting part, which is your left hand, which seems to have all these cool, unique abilities to them. So the ones that I've spotted so far, there was a brief short animation where he kind of sharpens his sword on his spare hand. I don't know if it actually does anything or it's just an intro to like a new scene. It also seems to be a magic system where you kind of like this blue aura on you, but there's no real sign of what it actually does. There's one of my favourites, which was a flamethrower, which was really cool, which you can use to burn down some of your enemies. And then there's the grappling hook. Now, you didn't actually use it to grapple, but what was shown was that you fire at an enemy, it latches onto them, and then you can pull it in. So it's more like a hook gun, I guess. Maybe you can use it to traverse things. I'd imagine so, but it looked really cool and kind of added another flavour to the whole combat system. And lastly, there was a big AoE kind of thunder effect. So it looks like the hand has some sort of electricity powers to it as well, because you punch into the ground and then a big AoE shock comes around you and hits all the enemies there. Personally, I really like this. You've got your utility abilities, and then you've got your main-handed combos and, swords that you can attack the enemy with. How they tie in together will really be the final selling point for it, but it did look very good in the gameplay that we got to see, because at the end of the day, what you don't want is just have a set of abilities that you use one, then another, and they don't really have any chaining potential. Now, something that will probably interest in terms of the Dark Souls fans out there, and that's the whole dodging mechanic. Now, I didn't actually manage to spot any rolling whatsoever, but what I did see was kind of lots of jousting mechanics. And when I say jousting, I mean like parrying and then stepping back and using like a dodge and a step rather than, rolling and missing the enemy swing like in Dark Souls. Now, I don't know if this is true for all weapons, and maybe different weapons have different dodging mechanics, because the fencing sword was the one that you were stepping back, which makes sense because it was a fencing sword and that's kind of how you dodge, swings, etc. And also, it looks like the way that you engage with your enemies, if you look very closely, you can see that there seems to be like a target locking system. So it's not like you're wildly swinging, attacking multiple enemies. It was like you're dealing with one enemy, and then you have to kind of like choose what you want to do when they attack or, dodge themselves. But what was cool about it is that it looks like there to be a quite powerful counter-attack system. So there were lots of examples of like when a swing came in, you did a combo to kind of stop it, and then you could counter and like rip out the heart of the enemy or do a big powerful attack that then crushed them. Either way, I'm really excited to see how this unfolds. I think the worlds look absolutely awesome. I think the enemies have a great scariness to them. I love how they kind of bleed oil when you hit them. It doesn't look like it's going to be an open world game either. Each of the roads and maps kind of areas look like they're very tunneled, so I guess you kind of take each encounter as it comes. And the other thing that I thought looked really beautiful was the whole lighting system, just the way that the street lamps, shone on all the enemies. If you have a look at the end, there's this beautiful scene where you see the first boss, and you can't quite see all of his details, but you can just see the luminescence on his great big hulking shoulders, and it really created a nice, beautiful atmosphere to it. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you love it or hate it. What did you think of it? Are you excited? Are you going to pick up Elden Ring? Will you pick up this as well? I want to know. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you all soon.